Civilization likes to define things into different parts and different ends. Between different ends and groups, people produce different opinions, and different thoughts with different perspectives produce different consequences. Multiple mainstream opinions produced by people who stood in different perspectives. Some of them became the product of political or religional, and so was architecture. The place where a person from defined the way they looked at things, just like the architecture defined by the ruling power of its origin. With different occasions happening at different times within the same place, could architecture express the rational monumentality in an ambiguous way, or could the reality be stimulated by the projection? In the year of 1959, the Communist Party taken over Tibet area by force, and after that, several riots and uprisings happened in Tibet, which the nearest one happened on 2012. With the enhanced military power applied in the area, the stability and safety of the area is achieved. The conflict between the political and religious power is intensive. The architecture propositions are not looking to represent or criticize both ideologies. The investigation process seeks what different architecture actually represents, or what they could represent. There has been three major perspectives: the lens from a curious traveler, the lens from a repelled monk, the lens from a local Tibetan. The project first defined the lens through different perspectives, seeing the railway station as a political infrastructure and its military strategic purpose is denser than its civil and religious purpose. As the mass flows into the platform, it has been dissected and splitted into half, placed on both sides of the station. On the right is the station office. On the left is the monk's dormitory. The temple flies towards the Podala Palace and peers through the termini, eventually stops right on top of the rails, supported by the crossed ramps. In the middle there is a monk study hall, with statues sitting on both sides and a library which aligns the warehouse for both storage and withdrawal. The railway station then exists as a political super-infrastructure suppressed by the monks. But the temple surrounded by a cargo warehouse works as a reality anchor, which reminds what is a fact and what is the ideal.
So I see that in parallel to what I learned from Joseph Campbell, who in The Hero with 1,000 Faces talks about the archetype and the manifestation. So the archetype would be the hero journey. Separation from ordinary reality at a threshold, journey to a realm of fabulous forces, encountering hero helpers, a decisive victory is won, and a return to enrich the world. That's the archetype. Manifestation is, well, that's Buddha, Christ, Muhammad, and Moses.
From John Lobel's YouTube channel, his public lecturer, which discussing the relationship between Kant's work and the book Hero with 1,000 Faces, with the quote, "The hero of yesterday becomes the tyrant of tomorrow, unless he crucifies himself today." Quote end. The hero can't always stay as a hero. With one faces, the hero will eventually be recognized as a tyrant. Thus the hero's three phases are: the phase which the religious power defeats the political infrastructure and taken the highest ground; the phase of the civil rising landscape challenging the sacred power of religion; the phase of the civil houses overseeing and highlighting the legislation departments.
Monumental doesn't just mean big. Monumentality is a celebration in form of a past that we value and feel is still alive in us. So the Beaux-Arts vocabulary was Roman, saying that we today, or 1941 in the case of the National Gallery, are Greek, Roman, and European in our origins and in our culture. We don't accept that anymore. Modern architecture rejects monumentality. The program of modernism was to make a new human being and a new society, to reject the past, and to create a universal materialist culture rooted in science and reason, not the past.
The Podala Palace was the second site, challenged by the square which specifically monumenting the successful takeover Tibet power. With a monumental square almost like a replicated Tiananmen Square, its purpose was to remind people the victory of the winning side. The market complex switched its winning party, thinking what if the political has been switched to civil and what the decision would be. The monumentality of the new power challenged the old power, and projection raised the civil landscape and worked as a mirrored facility opposed to the palace. The palace worked as a worshipping temple as a core function, together with monks' offices, tourist gathering hall, different temple halls, and monks' dormitory. The market mirrored from the worshipping temple, the bus terminal mirrored from the tourist gathering hall, and the residential blocks mirrored from the monks' dormitory. The complex projected back to the railway station, plugged into the left wing, overseeing the platform from the raised floor. Shared residential and market store and facade indicated the previous grid orientation. Water tanks and server equipment placed on the top, implying civil high ground. Servant equipment like shafts, stairs, and pipes has been highlighted both through the color and position, implying civil will take the highest ground. Market hall-like stadium seats extended up to the landscape viewing deck, overseeing the railway platform. Super stairs formed a dotted line connecting the cargo warehouse and the station. To design something which is a rejection of the regulated order, in this way, it should be the chaotic order, which the architecture still controlled under design, but the regulations are certain restrictions has been lifted. Thus, the disruption of the civil turbulence created by the chaos of bus terminal as a vehicle circulation and market hall as a human-scale circulation. In Hero's last phase, law has always been the bedrock for stable society. Seeing the court as the law's brain, the police department will be the law's weapon, an executioner. By flipping this arrangement, which the law surveillance by the people, but not as a tool of control, this composition has been reflected directly through architecture, where the civil blocks claiming the police headquarters and overseeing all the activities. When the dream translated to reality, it then becomes part of the sample and being plugged to the dissected blocks. The section then being transformed again, sheared to 30 degrees, representing the inertia of the grid, which switching between the station and the new urban spines. With the end point, the main entrance guarded by a typical Lhasa tea house, the connection between modern and vernacular being fully exposed. The color of the blocks expressing vernacular on the outside, but infected on the inside. The infrastructure truss and sky rail footing reminds the reality that the civil system is still supported by the political infrastructures. The center plaza is covered by the police blocks and vernacular courtyard. Civil overseeing the legislation department, from the tea house, the center courtyard, and the under pathway. It is not very right to imagine what it's going to look like when we're designing something space, like market or a plaza. The actions could be done by human or the activities carried out by human. It's all by imaginable. The formation of a market or the scenery of a plaza is almost formed completely by nature. The market itself, of course, made and designed by man. It is artificial. But what happens next is purely nature. Thus, we are not really designing a market or a plaza, or even a train station. We are really designing the urban skeleton. And by thinking the architecture itself is a skeleton, even in its final form, the flesh is human who stays still, and the blood is the human circulation. Under this background between political and religion ideology battle, while the Communist Party supplied on materials but poverty from the spiritual level, while the religious provided richness on spiritual level but extreme poverty to the people. It is hard to speak who is a real innocent party. The three irrelevant to architecture, which also the three key elements to form a city: the transportation, commercial, and residential. With three of them not just implying this situation, and also what is the ideal ideology should be.